Today we finish up our interview with Miss Clarissa Standafer, and it's been great talking to her. You know, it's just such a different world out there right now as a student and as a student teacher, and so we hope that you guys have gotten something out of this. You know, Kevin and I certainly did in terms of just trying to look at it from her point of view and see that you go through school all this time and you're being taught how to go out there and teach kids and organize them when they're in person, and now all of a sudden you're saying, all right, you're going to show up on the computer and you got to figure out how to do this. And even professors and teachers right now, they don't have all the answers for that. I mean, nobody ever has all the answers for perfect teaching anyway. You're constantly tweaking, but especially for this. So anyways, let's jump right back into it today. She talks a little bit about some of the curriculum she really likes and wants to implement as she goes forward, and some of the things that she's been doing on Zoom. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump right in.
Question I had for you is what you're getting your master's and you're getting and you're doing your credential right now. Do you have to do the CSET right now? Do you have to be taking your CBEST? What's going on with that?
So in order to get into the credential program, you had to have your CBEST and CSET. So that was like 2 years ago now, I think. But right now it's just the 2 cycles of the TPAs that I have to do for the credential. But that's about it with those.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you said you're also working on adapted. Your adapted. Mm-hmm. Is that something you feel like you want to pursue, or is it just something extra that you could add on that was easy enough to fit in your schedule and you thought it would be helpful, or is that more what you want to pursue?
So that's more of what I want to pursue. I actually, through Coach Chris, his now wife, is a APE teacher, and I was kind of indecisive in college of what I wanted to do, and I wanted to do OT, but I wanted to work with kids, and he was like, "You sound just like my wife, like go shadow her." And I went and shadowed her, and I fell in love. It was so interactive, and you were physically active with the students, and you get to help them move however they can and the best that they can. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And so I applied to Cal Poly because I know they have a really good APE program. And I love it. It's great. And I'm excited for my next 8 weeks for the student teaching for APE.
That's actually really cool. That's a cool plug for the other half of what we do. We not only talk to physical education teachers, we talk to college volleyball coaches, and you played for Coach Chris at Whittier, and Coach Chris stresses teaching life skills, building lifelong learners, and like, voila, here you go, folks. He's training this young lady and he says, go watch my wife and go watch her teach. And then here we are, she's, so, I mean, that's just really cool, and hats off to the Whittier program. And I mean, I'm sure you're making Coach proud. I noticed earlier, I heard, and I'm just fascinated by it, but you say that the kids run the mile in your Zoom class or your Google classes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like, how do they do that? Like, how do you grade it? How do you watch it? Is it like a trust thing where it's like, I'm going to go run the mile, I'm going to come back and tell you I ran the mile? Do you actually watch them go outside and run it? Like, can you walk us through that? Because I find that fascinating. I haven't heard a program doing that yet.
So it's the mile, and they have 20 minutes, and they watch like the PE department kind of made a video like running around the field, and it's like lap 1, and it's like jog in place. So they're basically like jogging or walking in place, or like walking in their room. And I mean, I do it too. Like if we're doing the mile, I like put my headphones, because we can listen to our own music. I put my headphones in and I'm like marching in place, trying to get them to march in place. And I would say maybe like 50 to 60% of the kids actually do it, but they just lose participation points for the day if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But it's definitely interesting.
See, if I was a principal and I was watching that, and I'm not a principal, by the way, but like I have my admin credential. And if I just like, hey, I want to observe today, I would like it almost bring me, not to get corny, but it almost like bring me to tears to watch that. Cause I'm like, these PE teachers are trying so hard. They're letting them listen to their own music. That's pretty cool. They're aware of that. They have found a way to do a virtual lab. I mean, if you think about it, the teachers have been thrown a really tough hand, and we talked about it before the podcast. Sometimes in academic, sometimes the focus, and I respect it, is on the English and making sure they're writing their essays and working with EL students, which is imperative to do in math. And I get that with all the testing, but sometimes when it comes like, what are we going to do with PE? And sometimes, I'm not saying you're administrator or you're administrator, but sometimes they just say, yeah, just figure it out. And I think that happens more often than not. And the fact that like your group of teachers, because we right now interview PE teachers all the time. And that's what we do once a week. And we ask them very similar questions. And the fact that your department is doing that, I think that's pretty cool, And I get that only 50 to 60% of the kids are doing it. But let's be honest, how many percent of kids do you think are doing Zoom PE to their best of their ability nationwide right now? So I look at it when I hear that, I was like, well, that's pretty cool,
Yeah, and you have schools too. I mean, California made it so middle school, high school, you didn't have to have PE this year. So I know of schools that decided not to have it. Mine included. I'm basically just teaching some wellness and helping with other things throughout the day. And those kids are missing out on a big component of, what their normal day would be like. So yeah. And to go back to Kevin's point of the percentage of people doing the mile, I mean, to be honest, the percentage of kids that are really running the mile hard when you're in person, sometimes it's not always as high as you would hope it to be either. So to have 50 or 60% on Zoom participating in that, I think is really pretty high probably.
But us PE teachers, when we have to prove to the state why it was valuable to do Zoom PE and pay us our salaries, I kid you not, I think that lap idea could get on the desk of them and say, hey, we were doing this was pretty creative, and my hat's off to just your department if you had anything to do with that, and good for you for modeling behavior and just saying, I'm going to throw in my headphones, I'm going to power walk this or jog, and that's all we can do right now is our best. We're in the middle of a crazy pandemic, so good for you.
Definitely.
So when it comes to adapted PE, I mean, again, with it being virtual, it's kind of hard, but I know you said you were looking forward to those 8 weeks. What maybe excites you most about adapted physical education?
Well, apart from the kids that I work with, absolutely adore the kids. And you kind of get to, I don't want to say, you get to be a little more creative with what you do. And I think that's really fun. I mean, it's going to be hard virtually, but the part that I was most excited to do for APE is like the IEP meetings, the testing of the students, just so I'm more familiar with it. And I went to my first IEP meeting actually yesterday, and that was pretty cool because my cooperating teacher like sent me the link and stuff, and that's what I'm looking forward to, is just learning how to be like a good APE teacher. And the AP teacher that I am going to be working with, I've worked with her the last 2 years, absolutely love her. So I'm excited that I get to like help teach her class and see what it is like virtually, because I don't really know what that's going to be like, but definitely excited for that.
So Coach Clarissa, not to put you on the spot, but I'm optimistic you'll be interviewing for jobs this upcoming, like May for the following year. And I would think an administrator would be like, Coach Clarissa, what's the number one thing you learned at ZoomP that you can bring to your physical education program that can even affect you when we do PE outside? So what are some of the main takes you've taken from student teaching thus far that that you can hang on to moving forward?
I would say, looking at more like general PE, like we talked about, just looking outside of just physically doing sports, but like the health part. And I love health. I love learning about health and nutrition. And I was thinking like exercise phys, like teaching the kids like what happens to your body when you are doing this, and this. Like I love that stuff, and like I feel like bringing that and like being enthusiastic about that to the students would be super cool. And also doing sports. I love sports. I know a lot about sports, so I have that too. But looking at like the APE part, because I haven't done that part with student teaching. I'm not sure. I mean, I know a lot when we do teach in person for APE, but the virtual part would be hard because you're not there to physically like help them. Their parents are there, or there's so many other factors, and so that's the only part that I think maybe I'm not familiar with yet, but I will be once I get to that part of my student teaching.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a good answer because, yeah, I mean, if you haven't done it yet, you don't know. And like we've said, hopefully it won't be Zoom for, for forever. I think you brought up a good point earlier on, though. I do think that it shows that we can do this going forward. And I think using programs like the one that you're student teaching at, and, we had a great interview last week with an adapted PE teacher who looks like they've set up some awesome stuff too. I think that allows somebody like me at my school to go to my administration and say, hey, look, these other schools are able to do this and really incorporate it and help their students out by giving them this opportunity. We can do the same thing. And so that's, I mean, that's reassuring to me that if it does have to continue this way, I can look to other programs and say, hey, look at how they're doing it. Let's try and make that work here, or take a version of it and make it work here.
Definitely.
Another quick question I have for you is, hopefully in the future we don't have to do as much, Zoom or Google Live. However, you never know. I heard an administrator one day say, hey, for the future, we might do Zoom for a week just to plan, just in case something like this ever happens again and stuff. So what advice would you either give to a colleague of yours in a class that you're like, okay, you're going on Zoom in 1 week. This is what you need to expect. Or if, let's say, student teachers in the future, which probably wouldn't be a bad idea to make them learn how to do Zoom for like a week, just to have it in the back of their, pocket, just in case we have to go through this again. What advice would you give? Because when we went through it, we're already credentialed. We already have our masters. Yes, we still have to perform for the students and do the very, very, very best, but we don't have that feeling like, oh my gosh, this is our first day of teaching. So what advice would you give to your peers?
What I did so after the first day, I went through the standards for 8th grade, and I was just writing down different ideas that I could do virtually, right? For each standard, I was like, what can I do to incorporate this standard that isn't physical, like we're not out on the blacktop or whatever. So I feel like that gave me a lot of different ideas of what to do. And then also maybe asking the students, like, what would you guys want to do virtually? And that has helped me a lot of what I plan on doing the next couple weeks. But definitely teacher pay teacher. There's a lot of cool ideas that I've looked at. Just looking at more science classes, if you will, or like health activities and that kind of stuff has also given me a couple ideas. But also, like we talked about, not looking at like the history of sports. Like if you're following your curriculum and you're on basketball, do the history of basketball, do the rules, do everything outside of it, and then you can do like shoot a paper ball into a trash can, or whatever you can do. But yeah.
That's awesome to hear. And I think you're thinking outside the box, and I think you're giving sound advice to your classmates. And Miles might have a few more questions for you, but if he doesn't, I just want to say on my behalf, it's really exciting to see you, and it seems like you're doing great things. I think you're a pioneer. I really mean it. That you're going through the trend. I mean, you're getting your credential during a time that is just so uncertain, and you should be very proud of yourself, and your professors should be proud of yourself, and you're in a way an ambassador for our field of work. And then it's also really cool that you're one of Coach Chris's kids, and it's fun. We just interviewed him a little while ago, and it's like, bam, we got one of his student athletes on here now. So you should be very proud of yourself. Thank you so much for being on. And if Coach has anything for you, that's fine. And
no, I mean, I agree with Kevin. I think the way you're going about this is perfect. And, I've made a lot of PowerPoints over the years to try and fit some of this stuff in, and middle schoolers will roll their eyes at you when you first take them in the classroom and say, hey, we're going to go through, the rules and the history of hockey real quick. And it doesn't have to be long, but once they get used to it, and once you show them some highlight videos and you give them some of those extra things, they do enjoy it. And I think the exercise physiology piece is great too. I think a lot of kids want to know why. Well, why do I need to exercise? And any little ways you can hook kids into being active for the rest of their lives, I think is important. And so I think having lots of different strategies is really wise. So I think that's a great way to go about it. And I think getting an adapted credential is amazing. Like you said, those kids are really awesome to work with. I can think of all the kids that I've ever had that really would have qualified for adapted PE or had an IEP that included physical education, or even the ones that don't. Oftentimes they make some of the very biggest impacts in a positive way. So I think you have a very bright future ahead of you, and I think it's great, and it's wonderful to have good people going into the area of physical education and adapted physical education.
Yeah, and Coach Clarissa, know this: you are now part of the valuable physical education family, and we have already about 10 podcasts. You're welcome to watch them, but also you have our emails, and anytime you need ideas, like, that's why we did this. We did this to help grow this field, and we put you on because, like I said, we really believe you're a pioneer in this part of the field of work. So please, the best educators share, and the best educators share ideas, and they help each other. So we're always here for you too, and I know you have great professors and Professor Killick and all that, but we're here to help in any way.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely will be reaching out for some ideas too. So look out for that.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. That was a great way to wrap up the week. I think that when it comes to physical education, we always have to be adaptable. We're always going to be the ones that have to adjust to schedules and adjust to different parts of the school being used for things. And so, like it is with Zoom right now, we just have to try and figure out what's going to work best, and where we can go and where we can take physical education. And I think, there's certain things that people are doing out there that shows that, we can do physical education through Zoom. It also is showing that, physical education in person is really important, and it gives kids a chance to talk with each other and interact. And that's something that we touched on in this, and that's something that's important, to be able to have some breakout rooms if you're doing Google Meets or Zoom, and allow kids the opportunity to interact with each other. That's one of the things I like best about physical education. I think it's one of the most important parts of being a kid, is having that time. And physical education is usually the part that gives that to them. So anyways, a big thank you again to Ms. Clarissa for coming on with us and talking. And thank you to Kevin for being our on here and hosting and coming up with some great questions and helping book our guests. So hope you guys will continue to follow us. Next week, I'll be doing some talks about physical education. We'll try and get Kevin on with me as well, and we'll continue to push forward with some valuable physical education information. So you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. I want to thank our sponsor, Stone Apparel. They do great physical education clothes. Made us this great polo for valuable coaching. And they do awesome vocabulary tees, perfect for physical education. Got great words on the back. You can customize them. Great artwork. Easy to work with. Dave at One Stone Apparel. Check them out, onestoneapparel.com.